If I told you that there was a jungler that was up for a vote in a rework poll and that people were telling me that she should really win, and then I said, but wait a second, maybe she's just really strong and broken and no one knows how to play her. Yes, it's SHYVANA, and outside of maybe Agurin and Malice, it always seems that people fail to execute her properly such that her win rate is never that great. She's never really in the meta in the core sense of a play rate, ban rate, and win rate component. And even when it comes to SHYVANA, VOD Review can help you improve. So if you want to record your full games but also receive automatic highlights that you can review in queue time, Outplayed is the way to go. Outplayed automatically records kills, assists, deaths, and other important moments, so you don't lose things like Baron steals, and this can be the best way to keep track of your progress from patch to patch, as of course Riot's replay system leaves much to be desired. It takes less than a minute to set up your settings for League, from highlights to a full session, share your highlights easily via Discord, YouTube, or anywhere else, but for the montage enjoyers amongst you, the video editor is easy to use and primed for your hashtag short creation. Click the link in the description below to download Outplayed for free to ensure you can capture every game-winning play you make. And now we have to talk about SHYVANA's abilities, because innately on her passive she deals 20% bonus physical damage and magic damage to dragons, which means junglers who like objectives, this is great. You also get bonus armor magic resistance for everyone that's killed. And the rest of her kit is really overloaded with 6 abilities and of course that game-changing ultimate. We've got the empowered basic attack that scales with AD and AP in her twin bite that applies on hit and on attack effects as well. By the way, that cooldown is reduced with the more basic attacks that you do, so attack speed, it's good. Your W gives bonus movement speed as well as magic damage per tick. Her E not only also scales with AD and AP very heavily in the AP's favor, it also applies a mark that any subsequent damage will now do target max HP. That means you really want to be leading with that E, of course. And then you have that ultimate that literally transforms you into another being while doing a copious amount of magic damage and scaling with 100% AP, giving you bonus HP, and then amplifying and changing your core abilities. I know everyone understands that the W kind of stays the same, it just gets wide, and E is obviously the carpet bombing of the entire enemy team, and the Q is slept on despite being an AoE swipe ability. The problem isn't that people just weren't aware of all of these interactions, understanding the mark, understanding of course the bonuses you get with the variety of the abilities. You also have the simple fact that you have to play around your passive timer to get your ultimate, kind of like Nara in the jungle, except a little bit more reliable. And of course with all these numbers and multiple abilities and different kinds of scalings, you have build versatility, build Christmas. Whatever you want is on the list and you can buy it. Obviously we are seeing a Frostfire Demonics Embrace Sork Boots rush at the moment, that is quite popular. We have the Night Harvester full Deathcap Nash's Tooth builds of the past, which still work with Dark Harvest. You can in theory go Conqueror against certain matchups, but we're seeing a lot of PTA again, which obviously is great with her Q, it has amp damage, it's something that she's always enjoyed. Because Dark Harvest isn't really reliable, you know, if you don't get going, you're gonna suffer, the PTA allows her to sort of cover those weaknesses early, still build AP and hybrid damage as she wants, also a little bit tanky, and be relevant throughout the game. So you have Dark Harvest, PTA, you can in theory go Conqueror first strike. For items you've got Frostborn, Nash's, Blade of the Ruin King, Night Harvester, you can go Stridebreaker, Trinity Force is obviously very good as well. We have Demonics Embrace Rush or Demonics Embrace Secondary. We have the Chem Tank build meta, which I'm going to talk about with the Agurin gameplay in this video. Combine that with any sort of AP, whether it's your Deathcap, Nash's Tooth, Shadow Flame, Demonics Embrace, Zhonya's for teamfight versatility, or maybe you simply want to do a Cosmic Drive. You can go into your tank optimization with Thormails and whatever you want. So when there's a multitude of build paths that can suit a champion, obviously some will be more optimized than others, and some will be more difficult to pull off and such that win rates won't be as great. Think Frostfire Demonics being your core default way to go at the moment. Additionally, because she's a farming jungler, not a ganking jungler, doesn't have easy to use CC outside of her ultimate, which again then just puts her in danger. We'll talk about that later in the video. You have to play her differently to most meta champions, and that can leave you susceptible to certain aggression and certain invades that people simply fail to navigate. They underestimate her power later, and they overestimate her power early. Combine ability and kit ignorance with a distorted playstyle that really doesn't suit her, you just have a recipe for disaster. And even though win rate is decent, that's because a few people that do know how to play her playing her very well, and those who don't, well, they drag it down. And you will be seeing a very sad example of what happens to a SHYVANA in the early game when she can do a full clear and sort of get away with it. Resets just giving up the crab again. You sometimes just have to give up crabs, give up prior on those sides of the map where you cannot match them. The whole point here is to sequence, the whole point here is to farm, the whole point here is to get dragons and 6, well 6 then dragons. But if the enemy mid is fed and the enemy jungler is roaming around as well, you can see you will die, you will have a rough time when you're invaded. The key is to simply go to sides of the map where the enemy jungler isn't, to make sure you can secure camps that are always securable, don't go to things that are most likely gone, To play a little bit of avoidance, make sure you get 6, use your ultimate as soon as you can in that early game, and only look for fights and situations that are advantageous to you and your team. Obviously, you can make outplays yourself to a certain degree, but you are not something that's looking to dominate as much early as you will late. So keep in mind the sequencing. Keep in mind that when you're invaded and against negative game state situations, simply, if you know Lee Sin's bottom side, take the top side. If you know his top side, take the bottom side. If you're being invaded by a top laner and a jungler, simply give up your red and say, you know what, it's gone. I'll take what I can because the sequencing is the goal. Translate that into a nice kill because you actually warded and tracked him. Translate that into maybe sneaking a dragon when the enemy jungler is not able to do so, and then carry on about your business. However, in the early game, if you do see opportunistic ganks, opportunistic pickoffs and dives, go for them. You're not an AFK farmer anymore. That doesn't really exist in the current jungle experience meta. You are still looking to have high CS PM. You know, you can have 7, 8, 9, even 10 sometimes, but you can still very easily have 60+% KP. Obviously, when you take this kind of style, you might have games, you know, under 60 and the 50 mark, but if you're at 30, 40 and have high CS and you're complaining about losing, it's not the champion, it's you, it's your jungling. So to take all of this itemization talk, rune talk, game style talk, early game flow talk, and learn how to maximize SHYVANA so that we can change this from how no one knows how to play SHYVANA to everyone knows how to play SHYVANA, let's begin with our gameplay. We will also deal very directly about the fighting and mechanics, and you can see good examples of what you should be doing because talking about that generally can really, you know, not be very useful. So obviously on a level 1 basis, you would have seen the runes on your screen for both champions. We ward the top side, and because it's a kindred, you know, against your Graves, Nidalee's, Jarvans, you expect as a farming jungler to be invaded. You slap the ward in the middle of the river so that they will not be able to do so without you seeing. If you track the enemy jungler has started on the same side as you now, you will lose the ability to sort of maybe take a crab considering lane prio. You will not be able to beat certain junglers in a 1v1 sense like a kindred. And very frequently, they will have tempo advantage in terms of getting out of their jungle, their 5-6 camp, even their 4 camp if they're that inclined, and will always look to have map impact before you, which means just go back to base. It's all about the sequencing, getting those Krugs, Raptors, Wolves, Gromp yet again. However, as I said, the key with farming junglers, the key with SHYVANA in particular, is making sure you are not out of the equation. Be present, show up, and capitalize on downtime to really get that CS lead. In this case, a good ward shows us where Kindred's going to be. We also know where Kindred is anyway. As soon as you see your mid laner likely to be dove, just like I spoke about in the video at the weekend, reactively path, get there, clean up the pieces. And every time that's the case, take what you can while the enemy jungler cannot intercede, while the laners will not have prio to stop you, which in this case is denying a mark. How nice. If you know the enemy jungler started blue into Grub and you do have your warding totem, you know, or something that can kind of leave some vision down, you do have a dive on the bot lane, you can look for it, but really don't overcommit to this, purely because, again, this is not the work. The work is getting 6 and getting a dragon as soon as we can. And of course, in the examples, you would have seen a lot of early dragons. I'm not looking for that in this game. This game, I'm going to show you what happens if you're not able to get those dragons and how you can still end up being a carry monster. So while we would have liked to steal that Kindred's Grump, assuming they would be going back to base, you know that the enemy bot lane can rotate, so can the mid lane, so it might have been quite an aggressive play anyway. You can fall back to your camps, you know you don't have prio for dragon anyway, keep on a full sequence. Kindred will sneak that away and secure it. You'll see the notification, you see the mid lane, not your concern. We are very, very close to 6 and top lane's looking kind of juicy. We can hover at the edge of Fog of War, wait for the engage, and then get into the fight. Remember, auto attacks will reduce your Q cooldown, and also if you would notice, we are actually maxing E in this case because we want to maximize those AP scalings. With this game, we will be rushing the Nash's Tooth, which obviously enables everything in terms of our unhit magic damage scaling, but also does a double whammy in terms of helping us get that Q cooldown refreshing as soon as possible. Obviously, don't auto push this wave, it's pushing back a little bit, and we want to position it in such a way that while Kindred is basically playing with bottom lane, which we don't care about, we can now secure the mark on the top side, we get our level 6, the wave is in a beautiful spot for the Irelia to return to the lane, and now we can annihilate her once again. If Kindred had shown bot, maybe survived, and shown any inclination towards counter-jungling us on that red side, we could have a different play afterwards, or before, but because that wasn't the case, we can simply do this, go back to base, buy on Nash's Tooth, and guess what? The war continues. And understanders of the Dragon's Breath will basically be saying, well, you didn't mention the ultimate cooldown and stacking your Fury with Nash's Tooth. Well, that's because we won 6 when I said it. That's exactly right. Nash's Tooth will help us stack Fury, helps our ult come up faster, and now when you see these opportunistic fights, remember you're playing around your ultimate, look at how to use it properly. While you might not always hit that sweet spot that you really want to, the point is when you ult in like that, you're going to deal a lot of damage. But you are using your W to obviously do that damage per second as frequently as you can. But you're looking to create distance and use that very quintessential Dragon's E to make sure you are exploding people and forcing them to change the way they're fighting. Every single enemy champion has to pay attention to your Dragon's Breath. They have to pay attention to when it hits, to where it sits and have to move around it. This contours team fights in your favor, provided you can keep up that pressure, chase down as necessary, and use your Q whenever you can. Now, I told you you're not going to have the easiest of games in this one, so Vex will get giga-fed, and of course you're seeing one of those highlights as SHYVANA falls, unfortunate. But if you were playing more of a beefy, tanky AD threat SHYVANA, which you can do, although I don't recommend it given her AP ratios at this stage in her life, then using your W and kind of using your Q as much as possible is definitely better. And while you do want to use your E for that fast farming and those good, non-ultimate moments, it's not something that you're necessarily focusing on when you're in Dragon form, which is more like a dragon-themed asteroid strike that's unrelenting. Hold lanes when you can, but if you see the enemy jungler invading your jungle, there's nothing really to secure, and even if there is, if you don't have ult and you don't think you should fight it, don't fight it. It's simple as that. Playing a little bit of avoidance, cat and mouse, equal and opposite, that's what you're looking to do here. The whole goal is 2-3 level leads, yes? So, let Kindred have the dragon, go ahead and take that Herald, counter jungle some Krugs, and if Herald isn't looking exactly primed, and you see Kindred once more in the bottom lane trying to force things, trying to keep up with you, which of course they cannot, back to base, out of base, level 9 to level 7. And here's the kicker, be patient with your ultimate. There's no need when there's a chase down going on here. Of course, your W gives movement speed, as you of course would know. You can simply use your E into the rest of your abilities in a regular situation, stack it up, get that percentage max HP damage going through, kill the person you can kill, and now when there's definitely no way of you catching, become a dragon. Don't worry about, hitting them with the ultimate. Just laser target them, hit them with your absolutely massive hard to hit skill shot, and then laugh. Obviously, you want to use your Herald here and get as much cash money as you can. If you're interested in how to use these Heralds and why it's so important and it's not so bad to not get dragons early, I'll leave a link in the top right. I did that video a few weeks ago. But one thing everyone should be paying attention to is the mid laner roam, and when your mid laner is losing, this shall happen. It's also going to happen if your mid laner left base and came down here, they're going to respond, so do keep your eyes open for that, try and avoid these untimely deaths. For remember, the death is not necessarily the issue. The fact of the matter is, while you're dead, you cannot farm. It's the same kind of toxic attitude that we have in content creation. If we're taking a day off, we're not making money, we're not getting followers, you're not growing our brand. Same kind of thing in jungle, except there's no real life implication. You just simply want to win. Again, we're holding whatever lanes we can because experience is experience, and that's what we need. Waiting for ultimate, we do want level 11 first because we do get some HP spike, obviously, amongst some other bonuses. However, if you see someone that is low and it's the enemy jungler and you have already demoralized them with a 2-level lead, don't forget to take flight and then E-bomb them once more. Remember, your E also will mark them, it's not something we're talking about, but it does. Even in Dragon form, it does mark them, so if you can hit it, catch up, and then hit the rest of your abilities, even a few auto attacks, you can do a lot of damage. But with great disappointment, Veigar lives for now. Now, ideally, we want to make sure we take that crab, we fall back to sequencing, we get healthy, but Vex shows disrespect to SHYVANA. And this is where SHYVANAs don't do enough things to really win games, to really take those leads to the next level. Ult over the wall, and then do your stuff. Hit your E and follow up with the rest of your abilities. Use another E as necessary. You don't always need to ult into 3 people. You're not a Malphite, and that's what you're seeing here. Ideally, yes, we can do that. We can survive, especially with Frostfire Demonics, but at the same time, you're not focused on that R damage in isolation by itself. It's about setting yourself up for E-bombs, getting those marks, chasing them down, using your elongated range and damage to continually put out DPS, to continually put out damage, all while kiting and remaining distance so that you don't get burst down yourself. And you're seeing a prime example of that over this dragon fight, because if you lose 2 dragons, it's all about getting 11, pushing waves, and making sure you can counter jungle yourself into good vision control such that that 3rd dragon is just simply free for you. And obviously with Chem Tank, as you're watching now, and the Nash's Tooth, you have a potent combo of HP, damage, resistances, percentage max HP damage, damage over time, movement speed ability, and, is there anything else on this planet you need? But you will see the downside over some of these clips. Yes, if you overcommit, go into a chokehold, you are squishier than if you were a tankier, fightier, kind of version of SHYVANA. Understanding in and out distance spacing, as well as using and playing around your E for your passive mark is really huge. And now, obviously, you can go into things like Death Cap straight away, but if the enemy team has a lot of resistances, there's a bit more tankiness, go into Avoid early. That's really, really highly valuable with your AP ratios and your AP damage. And as you can see, even if you're down a level, you can handle yourself in these 1v1s. She's a very, very strong 1v1 champion. Use your ultimate form initially, and if you need to finish them off in base form, you can do so. Dragon thighs or human thighs, she has some kick. Now, the rest of this game here is simply your standard macro, but a couple tips specific to SHYVANA. You can split push, you can definitely split push. It's worth saying twice. Make sure you keep your experience gains up and now move into a very heavy exist in their jungle and take all their stuff moment. What's theirs is yours, and in this game, obviously, we didn't have a lot of counter jungling going on. We really didn't need it. In other games, it's obviously not always most most beneficial to just do that. It's better to have some kind of reactionary pathing, take objectives, play around your ultimate, and so on. If you find yourself in a bind, don't be afraid to ult out to reposition, because again, you're AP SHYVANA or you have AP items, so your E is gonna do a lot of damage anyway, and you can always go back in afterwards. And finally, remember to use your base form as much as you can before ulting. You don't need to ult every single situation. Using your ult in the right moment is absolutely most crucial to success. You can also really twirly-whirly around with anyone, and if they want to go fisting with you, you know, you got really big fists. Or wings, I guess. And then in this final fight, after doing Baron and, you know, getting your death cap, you can see the damage and the positioning. Focus on target selection. Don't go too deep. If you do, turn back towards your team. You are, again, not a full-on tank. You are, again, needing to use that E as much as possible, and obviously get your Q up and down as much as possible. Yes, W is a damage spell, but honestly, using it for repositioning, like avoiding an Irelia ultimate, is something most SHYVANAs are not doing, and you can do. There's always this one directional focus of, hey, I'm SHYVANA, let me yeet in and just sit there and do stuff with my W. Hopefully, from this entire gameplay and of course this entire video, you've seen there's a lot more nuance to her abilities, and you've seen a copious amount of examples with how to teamfight and position. And if you're thinking, hey, wait a second, I'm low elo, I play SHYVANA, I don't climb like this because I don't have laners like this. Well, laners like what, an Inting Silas? Make your own luck by clicking the link in the top right, and if you simply want to deny enemy jungler any chance of happiness in this life, and you want to track them to the end of Oblivion and steal all their stuff and maybe kill them a few times, click the link in the bottom right.